Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I've got Logan with me. Logan, how are you doing?
Doing really good, Jamie. Just enjoying this fine day and just pondering to myself how I really wish there was a Dune RPG. Just just throwing it out there. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah, considering how popular Dune is at the minute, it wouldn't surprise me if we actually see a bunch of Dune video games because Dune Awakening that's coming, I think, late this year. At least it is on PC, and then it's coming to consoles. So I'm all for that. I've only seen the first film. I'm looking forward to seeing that hopefully this week. But yeah, Dune's going to be massive. I think we're going to see a lot of video games come from that franchise, and I think it's a long time coming. I think in the video game space when it comes to sci-fi licenses, you have Star Trek and Star Wars. You have Star Trek, which doesn't get AAA games at all. I accepted that when I was a kid. Star Wars games, thankfully, we're getting more of them. But I think like Dune, it's just something different, and I think that more like as a sci-fi fan, I know this is a bit of a off topic, but as a sci-fi fan, I love the fact that I'm seeing all these people that I never see talk about sci-fi loving Dune, and they quoting it, they're posting memes about it. It's like I'm seeing these sci-fi nerds grow out of the ground, like out of nowhere, and it's beautiful. Um, so I love seeing that the fandom grow in the sci-fi space. But anyway, outside of all the Dune stuff, Logan, this past week, have you been playing anything interesting?
Mainly I've been playing Brotato, just wrapping that game up with all the characters and trying to get the items and Dark Forces Remaster. It's incredible. Another S tier job done by Night Dive, who has become, along with Remedy, probably my favorite indie studio right now. Or, well, I guess they're technically owned by Atari, but not owned by one of the big three. And they're just really great at it, and it stays true to the source material, but modernizes some bits, and it's a lot of fun. If you missed it back in the day and you like Star Wars, or you like Doom 64 or Exhumed, Power Slave, stuff like that, definitely check it out. Recommend it. And I bought Unicorn Overlord. I got the Monarch edition digitally, and I'm excited to jump in. Finally have a vanilla software game on Xbox. For those who don't know, they're the people who made Dragon's Crown and some other games like that. They're a Sega partner, and it's like Fire Emblem basically, but not from Nintendo. And it looks awesome, and I can't wait to dive in. How about you, man?
I've been playing a bunch. Again, Avatar, the game just doesn't end. But I love that game. I got an update, I think it was like last week, so it actually performs and looks better now. Crazy stuff. I've been playing a game that launched on Game Pass about a week and a half ago, and I think more people need to play it. It's called Return to Grace. It's a first-person sci-fi adventure game, and people will call it a walking sim, but it's a very chill game. I won't go into the details of the story because it's actually a really good story. But if you're looking for a game that you can play for a few minutes each day and get that achievement for your Microsoft Reward points, that's one of those games. I literally played it today for about 4 minutes and got another achievement. And I'll do the same thing tomorrow. So that game's going to last me like 2 months at this rate. I've been playing mainly Judgment. That game, man, is incredible. I bought it when it came out, and it's just been in my backlog ever since. And if people are looking for a detective game set in Japan with amazing characters, story, music, it's I know it came out in 2021 on Xbox, but I'm gonna say this. I think it's probably going to be one of the best games I've played this year. When the year's said and done, because it's just so good. The combat is simple, but it's perfect at the same time. It's kind of like the regular Yakuza titles, not the turn-based ones. Um, the side quests. There's millions of them. There's tons of mini games you can play, like Outrun in your apartment slash office. It's incredible. I wouldn't be surprised if I rate this game when I'm done high nine, like 9.5 or something. It's incredible. It's often on sale as well. I highly recommend it to people because, like, I've kind of went back and forth with the Yakuza titles mainly because Yakuza Like a Dragon had insane difficulty spikes for me, to the point where I quit the game. I want to get back to it at some point, but I'm determined this year. I'm gonna get through Judgment, Lost Judgment, one of the ones that launched in Game Pass last year. Can't remember what it was called. Like a Dragon Gaiden, that's it. But yeah, great game, absolutely fantastic, and also Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun. If people like Doom games, it's basically Doom, but it's Warhammer. It's fantastic. But you know what? Let's get into all the topics because this week, even though January and February was filled with lots of drama, this week it's all good news. For the most part, we've got the deviation stuff to talk about, but outside of that, it's been a great week. Some fantastic news dropped today. A lot of new releases coming. I've just found out about new IP coming to Xbox this year, which is really interesting, which we'll talk about in a bit. But all in all, what a week. Now, Logan, before we get into the major topics, I know you wanted to talk about the Halo TV series. I'll put this out there. I have not watched it yet, simply because the way you watch it in the UK was a bit weird with Season 1. But anyway, when Season 2 finishes, I'm going to get a month of Paramount Plus and just binge the whole thing. So, what's going on with that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, for those who were turned off by season one, I would just I would recommend you give this one a chance. Like, give season two a chance, because it while it is still its own canon and is, not directly tied to events in the books, novels, comics, games, whatever, it does take inspiration and reference them or kind of remix them quite a bit. And season two is way more in line with the tone and some of the stuff from those than season one was. Season one had some elements of it, and it was really, and I enjoyed it, even though it had some stuff that was like, wait a minute, that Master Chief would never do that, or this would never fly or happen. It had some stuff like that, but I enjoyed it. Season two is like way better, really good. They've I won't get into spoilery stuff, but it if you've read books and other stuff, you'll clearly see references and ties to things, but kind of in a different light. And it's really good, and just throwing it out there to recommend to give it another shot. Or if you enjoyed season one, you're gonna absolutely love season two. And just I'm excited that Xbox has finally found some success and their footing a little bit in the media landscape of television, because we've got the Fallout show, which looks incredible from the trailer. We'll talk about that in a bit, I'm sure. And the Gears anime and movie that are coming as well. So just thumbs up, and I'm glad it looks like they've righted the ship with the new writers. Apparently, having a whole new writing room purge changes the tone of a series. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear about that because I think we're in a weird time when it comes to Hollywood, like TV and movies. But like for the past decade, it's been all comic book movies. Like I honestly think the next decade, it's going to be video game stuff. You're going to have pretty much everything you've heard of in the past adapted to movies and television. Like look at Netflix; they have a ton of IP made into anime. They have Dragon's Dogma, Castlevania. Um, I'm guessing there's going to be a Dragon's Dogma season 2 after the games came out, and that's going to be successful. But like, if people like video game IP, there's going to be a lot of adaptations soon. Like The Last of Us, that's popular. The Fallout show, which we're going to talk about in a bit. The only thing is, I've always thought like, wouldn't it be cool to get this cool like 200-300 million dollar Mass Effect movie? That's the dream. But honestly, I don't think I'd ever want that to happen. I can't see how you tell the first Mass Effect game in the form of one film. I honestly think it would work better as a TV show.
Agreed.
Although if it was me in charge, each episode would have a budget of $100 million. but I'd make Hollywood just lose all the money, just investing it all.
All
But
right, Bezos,
yeah, just
settle.
like if I was Jeff Bezos, I'd put everything into like a Mass Effect TV show. Like the whole season one is easily going to cost $2 billion, easy. Um, but if only. But yeah, it's a good time. Halo looks good. I can't wait to get into that when season two's finished. It's a good time. I think depending on how old you are, we've gone through a lot of bad video game adaptations. Like over the years, there was the Doom film from 2005 with The Rock, which I'm not gonna lie, if you get drunk with friends, it's actually fun to watch. Um,
I think it's hilarious. I love it.
there's the Mario film from the early '90s, which doesn't really resemble Mario at all. But we've had good things
Small
over the
head
years.
toothless.
Yeah, we've had good things as well. The Mario movie last year. We're going to get more films set in that universe, which is really cool. It's a good time. It's a good time. I do hope the studio that made the Mario movie, though, I hope they do Luigi's Mansion. That would be
Oh
amazing.
man, that'd be so good.
Yeah, like it just seems like it would work so well as a cute little like horror film. But yeah, Halo, can't wait for it. Again, we'll talk about Fallout in a bit, but anyway, now this week, fortunately, we only have one negative news story. Um, so Deviation Games, Sony partnered with them. This was by a bunch of ex Call of Duty developers. Now, even though it was a Sony thing, I was actually looking forward to what they'd come out with because in the first-person shooter space, if you want a military first-person shooter, it's slim pickings. There's not much to choose from. You've got you've got Call of Duty and Battlefield, both of which, Battlefield's in a weird space. Thankfully, they're getting better. The next game is finally going back to what it was like with Battlefield 3, which I love to hear. Traditional campaign, multiplayer, and there's obviously going to be a free-to-play battle royale component, but it sounds like Battlefront. Everything's got close names, so I apologize today. I'm still not feeling well. I'm gonna mix things up, but Battlefield is finally getting back to its roots with its next game. Call of Duty this year is going to be huge for Call of Duty. We've got what's it called? Black Ops Gulf War, I think it's going to be called. I think that's going to be huge. You have Treyarch making the whole thing, zombies, Spec Ops or whatever it's called, the campaign, multiplayer, and their obviously involvement in the next Warzone update. But like, it's going to be a huge year for Treyarch. But Deviation Games, like, I want more military first-person shooters, and I hate the fact that we get one every few years now. And if it's not Call of Duty, you're getting what, Battlefield once every 4 years. Like, I can't stand that. I hop between different genres all the time, and first-person shooters are really nice to, kind of get a reset if you play lots of open-world games. And as someone that hops between RPGs a lot, first-person shooters are just really nice to play, and it's a shame because, Call of Duty developers, they are talented. They really know what they're doing. Call of Duty has some of the best gunplay in the entire business, so to hear that the getting shut down is a bit of a shame. Hopefully things will get better, and hopefully a lot of them will land on their feet. Fortunately, there's a bunch of new studios opening up, which we'll talk about. But Logan, what's your takeaway from this? Because personally, I was really looking forward to seeing a new military first-person shooter.
Yeah, I'm bummed to be honest. Like I know it was gonna be mainly PlayStation focused, but they anytime a new studio comes up and it's made of talented vets in the industry, you get excited because you're like, okay, they have some experience, they know what they're doing, they're talented, and they have good ideas that they've shown before. So would be curious to see what they'd make. And like you said, it's basically a coin flip between Call of Duty, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Call of Duty, Battlefield. Like, honestly, I wonder if they should dust off Medal of Honor at this point. But just like for something slightly different. Or some of these other, like there used to be jeez. There used to be a lot of military shooters, but now it's basically, like you said, one or two. And then they're like almost like cinematic universes where you've got Gulf War and then you've got Infinite Warfare and just like all these crazy offshoots, but at its core, it's still Call of Duty or Battlefield. So I find it a bummer they're closed, and especially when they were kind of led to believe that they were going to be taken care of, basically. And when they signed that deal, they thought for years to come that they would have a good gig going and that they would kind of be Sony's FPS kind of studio or multiplayer studio. Maybe something would expand from that. And then to, get the rug pulled out for me and have to shut down, just, it really sucks. And it just continues a trend we keep seeing.
Yeah, hopefully they'll land on the feet. And like, look, as we both said, like it's slim pickings when it comes to military shooters. Like, look at Ubisoft, one of the biggest companies on the planet. They keep delaying X Defiant. Nobody knows when it's coming out. The preseason beta was delayed again. Like nobody knows what's happening. By the way, I played X Defiant. That is not fun at all. I don't know what they were thinking. And like people will say, "Oh, you're an Xbox fanboy. You just want to support COD." No, like back during the 360 generation, I used to love getting military shooters all the time. You had choice between Call of Duty, Battlefield, Medal of Honor. You had the offshoots like Homefront. Basically, Dragons. What's it called? The Dragon Rising games. I can't remember the name of it. But like during that generation, we got military shooters all the time, and now it's just like once every few years, and it's a shame to see. But again, it's unfortunate news, and hopefully all the developers land on their feet. But when it comes to some good developer news, in my opinion, one of the best directors in the gaming business, Stig, who was can't speak today, who was the director of Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, opened up a brand new AAA studio for single player games, specifically single player. This is great news. While it is a shame that he's stepping away from the franchise, he did want to pursue his own thing. But I think that we've seen over the past 2 months, there's been worries of the AAA game crash and people thinking that all these titles are just going to be games as a service. I'm seeing all these AAA studios pop up, these independent AAA studios. You have Casey Hudson, who's hard at work on their brand new RPG. You have that team making Exodus as well. Like, there's so many independent AAA developers at the minute. I think people need to just relax. Like, I've talked about this whole AAA game crash a few times now over the past year and a half. I don't actually think it'll be as bad as people think, like how it was in the US in the 80s. Like, I don't think that'll ever happen again. But I do think, these studios spending $200-300 million on games just isn't going to happen. And you can make a good AAA game with less than $100 million. Like, you just can. Not everything needs to be photorealistic. You can, like, there's tools available for all these developers. The MetaHuman stuff on Unreal Engine 5, that's going to help developers so they don't have to spend hours, if not weeks and months, developing individual characters. Like, when you play an open world game, how many NPCs do you think you walk past that you see once? Back in the day, that used to take developers a lot of time to make, and they'd make tons of them. Now they can do that with these AI tools and Unreal Engine. I think other engines is getting that tech as well, but it's cool to see we have these independent AAA studios popping up because we need more of them. When it comes to the AAA space for single player games, we're going to see more. I do see these articles pop up saying we're going to see more live service games more than ever, but the truth is they are all failing. Like, if you aren't called Call of Duty, Destiny, Division, Halo, Battlefield, like, you aren't really going to make much money. This is, I think we're going to go back to the 360 generation where you have these single player games pop up and they get supported post launch with things like expansions. Like, Logan, can you remember during the 360 generation where almost every single player game had expansions?
Yeah, and it was awesome. And I know we've had this discussion before, and it probably dates us both and makes us sound a bit boomerish, but Like, I honestly miss the era of big expansions that you could get for a game. Like, you remember all the way back Oblivion, like you had Knights of the Nine, you had Shivering Isles, which was a massive expansion. You had, Skyrim had Dragonborn, gosh, the Dawn Guard, and then the home improvement kind of Hearthstone, or the one focused on buildings and stuff like that. And then, all these other games had massive story expansions. The Call of Duties and Halos, like, you had content on a regular cadence. Like, you pay $15 or whatever, and you get 3 to 5 maps, and then extra skins or weapons too, or, different modes. And it made sense. And now today is like everything's kind of just monkeys with a dartboard, and it just like you have no idea what you're gonna get.
Yeah, like we've talked about this before. I used to think multiplayer support was better back in the day. You'd buy your game, you'd have a single player mode, maybe a co-op mode like Horde or Spec Ops or something, zombies. You'd have a multiplayer, and that would get supported with map packs. Personally, I thought multiplayer was better when we were paying for the maps. Granted, it did split the player base, but we were getting consistent maps in games, once every 3 to 4 months, and it just seemed really good back then. But like for single player games, you were getting single player content post launch for all these games. Remember GTA? We used to get expansions for GTA. Like the Ballad of Gay Tony and the Lost and the Damned are basically the size of entire GTA games, but they're just expansions, and they're fantastic. They're on sale a lot, by the way. I highly recommend people buy them and play them. JRPGs had expansions. Basically, everything had expansions, and I think maybe we're going to get back to that because, again, the people that play Warzone and Fortnite, those people are staying there. They aren't going to move to something else just because maybe there's a cool looking character on the box. They don't care. Like we've talked about this before. These gamers that grew up with Fortnite and Warzone, which makes me feel old, the concept to them of buying a console, a piece of hardware to play a new game is alien to them. They just don't get it. But to everyone listening, and like everyone that listened after, like to you, like, oh yeah, buying a new game, that's a thing you do. Getting post launch support and buying expansions and stuff like that, that is a thing you do. But I think, the time of these developers trying to chase that Fortnite money is done, thankfully. Um and I think, it's great. Like for people that people that prefer single player games, we're going to get more of them. If people prefer multiplayer, I guarantee you they aren't going to step away from Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo. Like, that's them. And when it comes to the shared world stuff, people aren't moving away from Destiny or Division. Division, that there's going to be new spin offs for that. I think there's a free to play version of the Division coming out at some point. Destiny's going to get a new expansion. Like, there's going to be something for everyone. And I know competition is great for the industry, but when you look at the single player market, I think people are just willing to spend more money. Like, I don't really see people going back to like playing these brand new live service games and thinking, oh, they're going to play for years. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, Logan, how many times over the past decade have we heard developers go, this shared world multiplayer experience is going to get 10 years of support, and then it closes like 2 years later?
Yeah, it's a sick joke. I mean, they might as well just start putting them out on that neon yellow paper
Yeah.
like Cyberpunk did. Like, anytime I see that, I go, yeah, okay, sure, Jan. Okay, yeah. We'll see about that. And then lo and behold, a few months later, they shut it down. The team is gutted roster wise, and they're moved on to a different project. That just them's the breaks unless you Fortnite or one of the major players who already has everybody by the throat.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, I think competition is needed, but if you look at the broader like picture of it, the multiplayer space isn't getting any competition because people are creatures of habit, and people aren't going to step away from Call of Duty. They're not going to step away from Halo or Battlefield. Destiny players aren't going to move. Like, how many times has there been a quote-unquote Destiny killer and that game has ended up killing itself? You know, Avengers didn't get 10 years of support. Anthem had great gameplay, but they forgot to take down the Christmas lights. And that game, basically, I think you can still play it online, but there's not really much point. You know, the Division, that has a huge player base. I think the cool thing about Division and Destiny is that you have fans of both. You know, you have the sci-fi first-person shooter and you have the military third-person shooter. You know, it caters to different people's needs. But if you want a military first-person shooter, you have between Call of Duty and Battlefield. If you want a futuristic first-person shooter, you have Halo. I can't really see many games popping up in the near future that'll, be competition. You know, we're going to have extraction shooters. Personally, I want Escape from Tarkov to come to console, but that's a different kind of game. But anyway, back to single-player games. It's good to see all these new single-player studios pop up because there is a huge market for single-player games. Anyway, we have more good news. So, and this was delightful news today, by the way, because we talk about old games all the time. I love playing old games, and I'm sure people listening, you love playing your old games too. Oh, by the way, we're half an hour into the show. YouTube sometimes doesn't share the video. If you really like the channel and the podcast, please share it on Twitter, social media, wherever it may go. Like, subscribe. If you want to support the channel with super chats, that's very much welcome. Anyway, so we got some great news today. Grandia HD Collection is coming to Xbox. Now, I never thought I'd see the day where this would happen because those are PlayStation 1 games, basically. And, we've seen over the past few years where, we are getting more Japanese support on Xbox now. And I've said before, like, there's more Japanese support on Xbox now than we've ever seen before. It could always be better. We could always get the big Final Fantasy games or, the weird offshoot Monster Hunter games, which we don't get. But we're still seeing more. And Grandia HD Collection coming out this month, that's a big deal. Logan, what's your thought on this? Because personally, I've never played Grandia, the Grandia games, because in the UK, unfortunately, a lot of game stores back in the 90s and early 2000s, if you wanted to buy a racing game or a sports game, you had infinite choice. But if you wanted a JRPG, you had to really go looking for it. So personally, I'm excited to play these for the first time.
Yeah, same here. They were ones I had been familiar with from name recognition, but I have to admit, I felt a bit Ben Kenobi-esque. Like, man, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. But it's finally coming to Xbox. Shows once again that more Japanese games are coming to the platform, even if, Square hasn't figured out how to turn all the keys and hit all the buttons yet on a few of them. But it's just more good momentum, and I'm very pleased, and I will be picking it up.
Yeah, so these games have full widescreen support, updated graphics. You can play them in English or Japanese if you want, Japanese audio and English audio. They look fantastic, and like I know people, like the majority of gamers, they want this brand new AAA experience, but there's something about going back to those older games that they're just satisfying.
It feels wholesome, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that there's something missing from that generation which we don't have now. If you go on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network or Nintendo or Steam right now, you can find an 8-bit indie game within seconds. If you want to find a AAA game, you'll find it within seconds. But there's something specific about that PlayStation 1 and N64 era games where, for some reason, developers don't try and emulate that style. We just don't get them for some reason. And I've been wanting more developers to do this. But thankfully, we're seeing more old games. So personally, I can't wait for this. I think it's going to be a pretty cheap collection. And if it does well, maybe we'll see Grandia 3. I think I'll be buying it day one. There's no price yet. I'm guessing it'll be cheap. But I love the fact that we're seeing more collections. The Sudoku duology, those are coming to Xbox this year. Like, if you want classic JRPGs, there's a lot coming this year. A lot, which is great to see. And speaking of older style games, there's a studio, I can't remember the name. If I can't remember, I'll put the article in chat. Um, there's a studio that announced about a few days ago that they are specifically working on porting over and remastering original PlayStation games to Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. Now,
Ooh.
that made me smile because, again, that's a kind of a lost generation to a lot of people. You know, the games are old enough to the point where you can't really play them on a lot of different services or even on PC because of, license issues and stuff. So over the next few years, outside of, all these new AAA games and indie games, we're going to see collections or standalone versions of these PlayStation 1 games, which have just been lost to time. And if you're around back in the PlayStation 1 era, that generation of games in the N64 had some amazing titles. Thankfully we got Episode 1 Pod Racer from N64. That's on Xbox now. I play that all the time. We don't get racing games like that now. The JRPGs from that generation, there's nothing like that now. Logan, what do you think about the whole... There's a studio porting over and remastering original PlayStation and N64 games?
Well, I am a huge proponent of game preservation and remasters, remakes to bring forth games to modern hardware. So this is music to my ears. Like, yeah, send me a link of um, who the studio is, and I'll shout them out and promote it as well. But yeah, that's such great news. There were great games from the PS1 and the N64, Super Nintendo era that in Genesis that would just be wonderful to bring forward. And I know Dino Crisis obviously gets shout out a lot, but like there are so many from that era that need to come back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would love to buy the Dino Crisis games because, like, we've been port begging and remaster or remake begging Dino Crisis. A game as a whole have been wanting Dino Crisis to come back for 20 plus years. It's been way too long. You have all these horror...
I'd buy it straight up
Yeah,
port
yeah,
at this point.
yeah. You have all these like horror games popping off at the minute, and you have like Capcom sitting there. They're coming out with these like massive hits all the time in these collections, and people like Capcom is at the top of the world at the minute. And it's like, if they want to get a little bit higher, you do Dino Crisis. And like that's all you have to do. Just RE Engine, Dino Crisis, or give us a collection. But anyway, it's good to see collections of old games are coming back. That was a generation where 3D games were really taking off. The original Resident Evil games. I would love the original Resident Evil games to come over, which we don't have. I think everything from... I'm trying to think. Code Veronica X onwards, you can play on Xbox. Outside of that, you can't play anything before. I would love to play the original Resident Evil 2 from the N64. That game was terrifying back in the day as a kid. But yeah, there's so many games coming. There's also the Gex trilogy. That's coming to Xbox this year. We just got the Tomb Raider games. I think that, there's always going to be these studios that are around to port games, like they call it port studios. And I've noticed over the past few months that there's this weird uptick in studios coming out of nowhere, and they coming out with PlayStation 1 and N64 games. And I love this, by the way. I love the fact that we're getting all these retro style games. I want to call it the lost generation of games, because PlayStation 2 and original Xbox games, they still look good to me. They've aged really well. But like N64 and PlayStation 1 games, they lost the time. You can't play a lot of them on PC, through Steam or whatever. Most of them aren't available on Xbox or PlayStation, so it would be really cool. And those games, I can't imagine they would be hard to, make widescreen, put achievements in them, all that stuff, maybe a bit 4K and 60, which I think a toaster could run PlayStation 1 games at 60 frames. Like, I think there's some good stuff coming, but it's good to see that there's more games coming. And yeah, I think if you're a JRPG fan on Xbox, You may be wanting the Final Fantasy VII remake and all that stuff. You may be wanting 16, which again I do think 16 is coming. But if you like retro and older style JRPGs, there's plenty coming this year. Like it's going to be a good year for JRPGs, and personally, I can't wait to play a lot of them. The only problem I have is time. I don't know where I'm going to find the time to play everything coming, because it seems like there's games being announced every bloody day that I want. Like Logan and I were just tagged just before the show went live. There's a new first-person cyberpunk detective adventure coming to Xbox this year, which I never heard of before. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's called No Time to Die. But like that came out of nowhere. It's a brand new IP. Amazing. Logan, have you got anything else to say on the classic game topic before I move on?
No, just I'm thrilled and I want absolutely more of it. And side note, really wanting an update on that Fallout 3 or Oblivion remake remaster.
Yeah, the Oblivion thing. That's going to be a wait. Honestly, I think the Oblivion remake slash remaster. I've seen it listed as both in the documents. I think the Oblivion game drops this year. I think that's going to be a summer title. I think they'll announce that at maybe the summer showcase. Fallout's next year. You know, according to the Bethesda leaks, Fallout was meant to come 1 year after Oblivion. But either way, you know, it's a good time to see these classics come back. We've talked about before, like Microsoft has more first-party games in development than ever before, and the fact that, you know, they still have most of their games to announce. And they're also going to put out things like remakes and remasters, which will supplement the other games. But like Oblivion with modern technology and just being able to, let's say, step through an Oblivion gate without a load screen, that would be really cool. I did see something a while ago that Morrowind is also coming, but I don't know how legitimate it is. That's why I haven't talked about it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I was saying chat to 13 Kerry mentioned like look, I think Morrowind would be perfect for. I think that's old enough to the point where a remake would be justified. You know, with the tools we
It's
have.
pretty dated.
Yeah, it's pretty dated. But I think, you know, that would be justified, and plus that would hold people off till, let's say, Elder Scrolls 6 coming out. You know, stuff like that, which I think it's likely going to happen. I think, you know, Microsoft they figured out, like, look, they have these big games coming every year. And like, look, if you look at Microsoft's like development studios, they basically have several AAA games coming out every year. There's also going to be the PC ports like Age of Mythology, which is also coming to Xbox. But they also have enough studios to put out things like the smaller titles, like, you know, a Hi-Fi Rush, a Pentiment, but also remakes and remasters. And I've never had a problem with remakes and remasters. I just think it's a problem when those are the only things that people are talking about. But it looks like people are going to get everything, which is really cool. And personally, like, again, my only problem is time. If and when Microsoft announce Oblivion this year, which they will, where am I going to find the time to play Oblivion? Like, Oblivion is massive. That game has, I think, 150 dungeons in the game, and the dungeons in Oblivion are amazing. Like, best dungeons, in my opinion, in any Elder Scrolls game. And I think the cool thing about that is that when it comes to Microsoft doing remakes and remasters, you have the ability to play the originals, you know, so you can play the original at 4K 60 if you want, or you can buy the new one when that comes out. Both options, which is great. Everyone wins. But I think that I think it's going to be a big year for that stuff. And also, you know, the 4K upgrade for Fallout 4 is meant to come out this year, which I can't wait for. I know there's a lot of people been waiting for Fallout 4's like next gen upgrade. It's going to be a good year. I think like 2023 gets looked at as one of the best years in gaming. Personally, I think this year is going to be even better. You know, you have all the new titles, you have all the smaller titles, you have all these collections of older games coming back. Like, it's a great time to be a gamer. Which is why I don't really get swept up in all the drama on Twitter. It's like, it's going to be an amazing year for games. Like, it's an extremely positive time for gamers, and that's why I don't sweat about any of the drama going on in the whole game space at the minute, because it's like take your chill pill. You know, it's all going to be fine. You know, there's new games announced for Xbox every day. Every day. And remember, Logan, about a month and a half ago where people were worried that Xbox would stop getting third-party support, yet there's new games announced every day? What's up with that?
I don't know. Insider hashtag 7529 told me, the sky was gonna turn red and we'd all be gone in a week. So you never know.
Yeah, it's always these weird accounts that pop up trying to pull you down, and like the fandom. Like, look, the Xbox fandom is amazing. There's many games coming. It's going to be a great year. It's just people need to find the extra time to play these games. Which, again, like I'm one of these people where I'm a bit indecisive. I go all over the place when it comes to playing games. Like at the minute, I have Crisis Core reunion footage going on. I want to replay that. Where do I have the time? you know. But anyway, good year for gamers, and the good news continues. So last week, after the Xbox partner preview, a bunch of new games were announced. People are getting a lot of interest in The Alters, which is a new third-person sci-fi game. Personally, I cannot wait for that. Um, I was so excited about that game when it was announced because it was a sci-fi title. I completely missed the story for that game, so I've been watching the trailer since and reading about it, and like I'm even more intrigued now because you create clones of yourself where you alter memories of that person's past where they would have become different people. Like I completely missed that at the time because I was like a dog chasing a car. Right, I just saw something shiny and I needed it. That's what I'm like with sci-fi. I was like, ooh, spacesuit, and I missed all of the story altogether. But that game looks fantastic. The new Capcom IP which launches in Game Pass. But the really good news is that the Stalker game dropped, the remaster trilogy of the first games, and it's Stalker: The Legends of the Zone trilogy, and it was shadow dropped that day. Really cool thing. And the developer studio in Ukraine obviously needs the support. The great thing to see is that Stalker Legends of the Zone trilogy is at number 4 in the UK in Xbox top paid section, which proves people are still willing to buy games, especially even if they are old games. Because those are old games. You get in 2007 first person shooter graphics. It does have 4K 60, fortunately, on Xbox. Logan, did you play that yet at all?
I have not, but I bought the collection and it's installed and ready to go.
Yeah, well, I've got it as well. I can't wait. The thing is, that game apparently has flawless 60, and it's 4K and all that stuff. Apparently later this year, it's getting a free next gen upgrade on Xbox as well as mod support. Now, if you've seen some of the mods people have made for Stalker on PC, there's some crazy it's a scary game when it comes to first person shooter. Anyway, you've got these face hugger things jumping at you. People have modded in xenomorphs from Aliens, so I think people are gonna have fun with that. But it's good to see that you have this collection of old games popping off in the top 5, which I love to see, and I'll probably get to playing that soon. Again, it's a first-person shooter with horror elements. I think a lot of people are going to love it. But it just goes to show, you have these random people on Twitter, called Alex576 1000, noob killer, and they'll say Xbox guys don't buy games. But if you look at the top paid section, it's all new stuff and a lot of old stuff. It's a mix, right? I think people need to take a step back from the whole gamers don't buy games thing, Bit of a tangent, I know, but hey, it's good to see that Stalker's popping off. The sequel drops this September, which is in Game Pass. Stalker 2 is arguably one of the best looking games I've ever seen in a first person shooter. Can't wait to play that. That's going to be huge this year. I think that if you're looking for a first-person shooter that isn't Call of Duty, it has realistic weapons, Stalker's going to be that game. Get the trilogy, and then you'll be ready for the new game that launches this September. That's obviously going to have modern, how should I put it? Modern controls, modern gameplay, and all that stuff. But it's still going to have that Stalker feel, which the developers have pointed out multiple times. But hey, love to see the support for a game like that, and I just hope it pushes other developers to bring out more collections, which, again, I really want more collections of games. Anyway, we'll move on. We have a ton of stuff to talk about today. You know what? Yeah, this isn't really a negative thing, but I just want to talk about it anyway. So, and Logan, you'll have noticed this. Over the past month, with everything that's gone on in the gaming space, people popping off saying, all these games should go to multi-platform. Like Microsoft announces a game, like let's say last year or anything, and the first thing journalists come out with isn't like, who do you play as? What's the story about? Anything like that. The first thing they ask is it going to other platforms? And that really got me thinking, like, isn't it weird that, like, new games can get announced? We don't know anything about them other than the trailer and the announcement we've just seen. And journalists will go around asking, is it going to other platforms? Now, to me, that seems really unprofessional. You don't see these journalists do this with PlayStation or Nintendo. And before anyone says this is because of what happened this month, they've been doing it for years. The Pentiment was announced. One of the first interviews I think I saw from GameSpot, they asked, is it going to Switch? It seems like a perfect Switch title. And, I've heard, like, Rand mention this a few times, and I've been iterating the same thing. Like, these game journalists and, huge influencers, they know nothing about the Xbox space. I've had to explain to it, and I'll keep this person's name in my mouth because I don't want the drama, but, like, I've had to explain to a massive multi-million gaming YouTube channel, content creator, shall I say, that the Xbox was in fact, backwards compatible with Gears. And like this person,
that is insane.
Yeah, and this person had no idea that you could still buy the games on Xbox and that they had upgrades. Like this person had no idea. This person claimed that there's no way to buy Gears legally. You just had to go out and get them, in certain ways on PC. And like a lot of these people just have no idea about the Xbox ecosystem at all. Even the journalists, they have no idea. They have no idea. Like, Logan, how many times have you been scrolling through Twitter and you see IGN pop out with another article talking about how great 7 headsets are on PlayStation or whatever? But have you ever seen, let's say, IGN put out an article about how good Microsoft Rewards is?
Now that you mention it, I don't think so.
Like, I never see Microsoft Rewards being brought up. I never see the fact that we get free upgrades on console, right? That never gets brought up. When the whole $70 like this generation popped out, journalists weren't going around, hey, isn't it cool that you can get these free upgrades on Xbox for your games for free? You get the 4K, the 60, the enhanced graphics, all that stuff. Nobody reports on it. And, like, I notice all these journalists, and this isn't an Xbox tax thing. This is just, like, an observation thing. I've noticed over the past several years that these journalists, like, they clearly grew up with PlayStation. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But, like, their preferences never changed over the years. And that clearly shows in their work. Persona 3 Reload gets announced on the Xbox stage, it was huge for Microsoft to have a JRPG not only announced on the Xbox stage, but it was a Persona title, and that was also to launch in Game Pass. And someone from IGN had the audacity to tell me that the error of not listing it for Xbox was because the database wasn't updated. But if it was announced on the Xbox showcase, how was the database wrong to begin with? Lies of P.
That database is looking pretty sus right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to pop off about IGN before we get into all the other good topics. Like, how do you have Lies of P, which no one was talking about other than me on Twitter, and then it was announced for Game Pass, and that's when all these articles start talking about Lies of P all of a sudden, and then IGN just all of a sudden forget to list Xbox as Lies of P. Mortal Kombat, they forgot to list Xbox. Sea of Stars forgot to list Xbox the day after it was announced that it was coming to Game Pass. And, like, this is not a tinfoil hat thing. Like, I just don't trust a lot of media outlets. Clearly, I don't think that they've been paid off, but I think, like, if you work at IGN and again, this is just an opinion, and you've grew up with PlayStation, and you haven't changed your preference, maybe you let that interfere with your work, because over the years, I've seen a lot of this come from IGN and GameSpot as well. Like, how do you have Final Fantasy? Sorry, how do you have Rise of the Tomb Raider exclusive to 1 year for Xbox, and it's the worst thing ever? Xbox fans shouldn't celebrate this. And then when Final Fantasy VII Remake is announced to be exclusive to PlayStation, it's celebrated. Like, that seems kind of hypocritical. Like, how is that a thing? And it's been going on for years. And the thing is, if anytime you point this out, they'll call you a fanboy, even though you have proof. And like, look on Twitter, people might get annoyed at it. Like, where I post pictures of like these articles where, like, if Microsoft came out saying there's no games this year, you wouldn't have these outlets going around saying this is genius, this is a good move. Like, no, Microsoft would get slaughtered in the game news. But I've like seen multiple articles this year that PlayStation doesn't have any first party games this year, but that's okay. Like, where was that energy in 2022 when all of Microsoft's games were delayed? Like, we don't see the same energy, and I think it's one of the big reasons why you see the Xbox fandom on Twitter try and call this out. But if you do, you either get blocked, you get called a fanboy, no matter how much proof you show them. And it just seems like there's certain media outlets or certain people at media outlets that they will bat for Sony and just crap on Microsoft at any given opportunity. Like, look at Nintendo podcasts for GameSpot and IGN. Do you know what they talk about? Nintendo. Every aspect about Nintendo, which is great. They talk about, the features. They talk about the Switch. What do they want in the Switch 2? All that stuff, right? Which is amazing if you're a Switch, or I should say Nintendo person. If you're a PlayStation fan, you go to a PlayStation podcast at IGN or GameSpot or whatever. They talk about what games they want to see about from PlayStation, what's coming to PlayStation, what Xbox games they want to see on PlayStation. If you go to an Xbox podcast by any of these media outlets, do you know what they talk about? What games should go to other platforms? And 90% of the time, like, hey, what did you play this week? Oh, Bloodborne. Like, the Xbox coverage at these media outlets is disgraceful. And I've noticed that it gets worse every single year. Microsoft, they have a huge lineup of games this year. They have HellBlade 2. They have Avowed, Indiana Jones. What else? They have Flight Sim 2024. They have Towerborn. They have... I'm probably forgetting one. Did I say Avowed? Probably. They have Age of Mythology. And there's other games that's going to be announced this year, which comes out this year. Arguably Microsoft's best year ever, and none of these media outlets are saying anything. They're not saying anything. And that speaks volumes to me. Hell, like, do you know someone from IGN, and I will not mention names, blocked me because I made a meme. It wasn't really a meme. Someone on IGN basically said that the Kinect adapter for the Xbox One S was a mess. And I basically copied that entire post and posted that the PlayStation VR is a mess. The thing is, the Kinect adapter goes behind your TV. The VR thing goes in front of your TV on the floor, right? And this person from IGN got really offended by this. So I pointed out that, one goes behind the TV, one goes in front. So why isn't IGN covering the fact that one is a mess? And that person blocked me. Because I was right. And this has been going on for years. Do people say that the Xbox tax is real? I mean, I'm not going to confirm nor deny it, but I will say this. You can really tell when a media person from like IGN, GameSpot, or name whatever outlet you want, they have a preference. Like, Logan, am I being tinfoil hat wearing here? But it is very obvious to see when certain outlets have a preference.
No, you're not tinfoil hat at all. And honestly, the people who don't acknowledge that it exists in some format are either head buried in the sand or have their hands over their ears going la 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 la, don't want to talk about it, whatever. Like there's clearly some levels of tomfoolery that goes on. How deliberate or not, who knows. But that some is just, inherent bias. People like certain things over others, so they talk about them or hype them up more. And that's perfectly cool. I get it. Like I like this team more, so I'll talk more about them compared to their rival team or something else. Like, yeah, I get it. But some of the stuff, like when it comes to like business strategy or like just like blanket statement, like should be just unilateral versus trying to spin it for one versus the other. Like, for example, I mean, this horse is like a pulp by now, but the whole Rise of the Tomb Raider Final Fantasy 16 comparison.
That tweet's legendary, by the
You
way.
know what I'm talking about. I know what you're talking about. But it it's just like, how is it genius for one and benefits no one but toxic fanboys on the other? Like when it's the same decision, literally. And why does one act basically call about an act of Congress where you have media people run around like chickens with their head gone and screaming and crying and calling until Square Enix finally has to issue a statement saying, "Don't worry, guys, it is coming to the platform. You guys just need to calm down. It'll be okay. It'll be all right. Just smooth your feathers. It's gonna be okay." And then versus the other, um, it's like, LOL, just buy a PlayStation or get a second job or, this or like, suck it Xbox or whatever. Just like it's just really revealing and interesting, and they very, very, very much don't like it when you bring it up.
Yeah. I see Kerry mentioned in the chat, does it have anything to do with the Windows hate? I mean, it could do. It could do. People have disliked Windows for some reason. Like, I don't know. Maybe I missed the memo that day. At school, we grew up with Windows and XP and all that stuff. So, like, it's just
Same.
it's what you grew up with as a child. So, like, I never understood the hate from Microsoft because of the operating system, right? I get the Vista stuff. Vista was a mess. We can all agree. But XP, flawless. Flawless. Loved XP. But I never understood the hate for Microsoft. When they came out with the Zune, people trashed on it, despite the fact that everyone was coming out with an MP3 player. It was weird. I think that you have these media outlets, right? And bear in mind, this wasn't even a topic. You had these media outlets where, like, they were pushing Stadia, and they were thinking, "Oh, Stadia's going to be great." And it's like, by Google, and they were pushing that, which was streaming only. And you have Xbox here. And by the way, the main reason I came out with this topic is because one particular thing happened this past week, which made me pop off. And it's that about a month ago, Phil Spencer, Sarah Barnes, Matt Bootley literally said that they are working on hardware that's coming out this year, and they are working on next generation hardware, right? And it was great to hear that. I think everyone in the Xbox gaming space needed to hear that. So what did IGN come out with the other day? Was it the end of Xbox like hardware is coming or something like that? And they basically ran a headline, and it was a quote, part of a quote from Peter Moore. Now I'm sorry, like I'm a Peter Moore fan. I like Peter Moore, but how the hell do you take part of a quote from someone that ran Xbox over a decade ago? Who, like, let's face it, Peter Moore did a fantastic job with the Xbox 360, but the way that business was run then is different to a modern business like Xbox now, with the way streaming works and Game Pass and subscriptions, all that stuff. Like, for him to come out and say that Microsoft's preparing to exit the hardware business after Microsoft literally said they're working on next generation hardware, were they going to be the first ones to come out with next gen hardware? It just felt really unprofessional to me that they ran with that as a headline. It's very disingenuous where you take part of a quote, run with it as a headline, and basically state it as a fact. Like, that is really dangerous and disingenuous. And I think that, gamers should demand better. We deserve better because it's lying in your face, basically. It's lying with truth. You take part of an actual statement, you clap it on a headline in bold text, maybe italic if you're feeling a bit naughty, and then run with it. And it's a shame to see because Peter Moore, I'm assuming that he didn't mean anything bad by it. It was just him looking at the modern industry through his 2008 2009 mindset, and that's fine. But you have IGN, the biggest game media outlet on the planet, whose job it is to be split down the middle, be fair, and they aren't fair by any stretch of the imagination, and that is worrying. The news is what we're meant to believe, and places like IGN, GameSpot, all these places. And by the way, like you said, Logan, this past week I've seen people come out, people in the media say that, hey, if you want Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remake, don't hold your breath on Xbox. Get a PlayStation. Like, where is that energy for Starfield last year? Where is that energy for Hi-Fi Rush? First-party Xbox games. Like, the reason I post these dumb replies I get on Twitter is to point out the hypocrisy that how dare I, an Xbox fan, want Final Fantasy on Xbox, and I'm told daily to buy a different console for a third-party game, yet these same arsats, let's just say, I'm trying not to say anything bad this week, but will port beg first-party Xbox games, even before the rumors started. And this has been going on for years now, and there's no stopping it. And again, the more it needs to be pointed out more, because that's the only way someone will take notice. And I just wanted to mention that because, again, to me, it's been very obvious this past week, especially IGN. Like, they are the culprits. They are literally lying with truth, and that being headlines. Like, taking part of a quote from Peter Moore just seemed very disingenuous that way. I don't know. Like, Logan, you obviously saw that headline, right?
Yeah, because like when you first see the headline or the quote, you're like, oh boy, here we go again. You're like, this is gonna be like, everything's gonna be doom and gloom, all this bad stuff. It's like Xbox has no idea what they're doing. Everything's awful. Like, seriously, I thought we had just fixed this and addressed this. What could they have possibly done now? And then you dive into it more and you look into it. You're like, okay, where did the quote originally come from? When did it originally come from? And then how was it presented? And then how did they actually spin it and put it out there? And when it takes, Houdini levels of, escapism and twisting to get what you have out there, then, something's a little odd about that.
Yeah, I just think we should demand better in the fact that, IGN, GameSpot, they hold, like, the keys for, like, 90% of game news. Like, I put it like this, Windows Central, a primarily Windows and Xbox-centric website, they are not afraid to give an Xbox game a low score. Or, like, say what it is. That's why I like Windows Central. They actually, like, come out and tell the truth. It's one of the reasons why, back in the day, in the early 2000s, I used to get official Xbox magazine and official PlayStation magazine every single month.
And Nintendo Power.
Yeah, I used to get Nintendo Power when that was available in the UK, and I noticed in the early 2000s that every single first-party PlayStation game would get a great score from that magazine, and on Xbox they were really fair. And bear in mind, the official Xbox and official PlayStation magazine, those aren't actually run by PlayStation or Xbox. That's a misconception out there. But like, there's just these journalists. They sometimes show their favoritism, and I don't like that. But yeah, we'll move on because again, we've got a bunch of good stuff to talk about. Anyway, between last week and this week, Capcom had their showcase where they showed off a bunch of new stuff coming to Exo Primal, Dragon's Dogma launches on Xbox this month. It looks amazing. It in my opinion, it's probably going to be one of the biggest RPGs of the year. But they also came out with this cool character creator. You can download it now. I think it was like 9 gigabytes or something, where you can like fully create your character, what that'll look like in game, and also what your pawn will look like. Now, for people that don't know how pawns work in Dragon's Dogma, basically you create a character that's, how shall I put it, kind of a party member, and then when you're playing offline, that other people can use that party member while you're not playing, and then next time you go play your game, that person comes back, as your party member, but they also have like things like rewards, like armor and weapons and stuff and items. It's a really cool system. I think more developers should use that. Well, anyway, people have been messing about with the character creator, and it turns out it's the best character creator ever created. Ever. People have made Daenerys Targaryen, people have made Jim Carrey and stuff like that. I've tried to make Ciri from The Witcher 3. Logan, have you tried that at all yet?
I have not jumped in, but I have thoroughly enjoyed all the pop culture spectrum I have seen on the character creator. I've seen everything from some like acid trip looking junky Pikachu
Yeah.
thing to like Daenerys Targaryen or emo Toby Maguire from Spider-Man 3 or just like all these just incredibly well done things. And honestly, this I think could be a start of a new trend. Like honestly, how many it's a long running joke, but it's true that people spend like a solid several hours in character creator before they even jump into the game itself for Bethesda titles or everything. It's like, oh, I gotta get the wrinkles just right, or the hair, or the muscle tone, or the character backstory, or whatever. And you spend a huge chunk of time in that, where it's almost a game in itself. So the idea that you could have a character creator out before the game comes out to where you can mess around with it and fiddle with it, get a cool, fine-tuned everything and get everything ready to go. And then when the game is available, you can just upload your character and you can jump in and play immediately. To me, this sounds like a great way to start a new movement and a new, standard going forward.
Yeah, and it gets a lot of people hyped because, like you said, people will spend hours making their own character. Like Starfield, I know someone that spent about 2 hours making a character. like that's ridiculous, but
It,
like
well, it might have been me.
yeah, and like I hope to do it with like Elder Scrolls and Fallout and just other RPGs because like especially Microsoft, like they have a bunch of RPGs coming out in the next few years which specifically have character creators like Clockwork Revolution. Like that's meant to have a deep character customization tool. They should release that standalone because like the other day, Dragon's Dogma was trending number 2 in the UK just off a creator app, which is crazy. But you can literally make anyone like Logan said, the demented, horrifying looking Pikachu. Daenerys Targaryen. I've seen a lot of Timothy Chalamet's like people
Mhm.
going mad with the Dune hype, but you can pretty much make anyone you want. That I've never seen customization options like this in a game ever, and I hope we see more like this because you can literally make anyone you want how you want. And before we change topics, I'll go over a bunch of details about the game that people might not know. So the game is 4 times larger than the first game, but it's more dense as well. So in between towns, cities, and villages, they've also put things in between which will kind of get your attention, such as like temples, ruins, stuff like that. And basically, from what the developers have said, they want you to have this sort of Lord of the Rings style experience where you're walking on a journey. Because again, the game does not have mounts. You are walking from place to place unless you've got to somewhere that you've been to before. There's no fast travel, and I've seen a lot of people kind of like tilt their head at that, thinking like, why? Honestly, I kind of like it. When I played Skyrim, I actually walked everywhere. It was interesting to find things. You found caves and ruins that way. But this game's huge, man. There's 10 different vocations that they've announced now. You start the game, you can pick between archer, mage, rogue, and warrior. And then later in the game, as those classes, there's like deeper versions of those. So if you play warrior like me, the next version of the warrior, basically you have no shield anymore. Your armor acts as a shield, and you're more powerful. And then the third version of that character, I think it's called Warfarer, where you can also have magic infused weapons. And you could do this with the archer class as well, and basically blend together different classes. So it looks like by the end of the game, you're going to be able to do some like Skyrim level stuff where you blend classes together and play exactly how you want. A lot of people have asked me in the past, like, is it a Souls game? It's not. It's not. It's kind of like this weird blend between Skyrim, The Witcher, and maybe the dodge mechanic from Dark Souls. But like, outside of that, it's very much its own thing. I think a lot of people are going to have fun with this. Again, download the Character Creator app now. It's free. And by the time the game comes out on, I think it's the 23rd, 24th. Anyway, when it comes out this month, you upload your character and your pawn, and you're good to go. Fantastic. And I hope we see more of this because, again, it's interesting. It gives you a taste of what the game looks like. I will say this, though, for people that haven't downloaded the creator yet, there's a lighting option, so you can change the lighting in the character creator to see what your character will actually look like when you're playing with realistic lighting in-game. Your character may look completely different than what you think, so mess around with the lighting. Just thought I'd bring that up. You know what? Let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff. So, Sea of Thieves. Now, Sea of Thieves is an old game. Technically old game. It launched, 7 years ago? It was one of the first titles, I believe, that launched in Game Pass, I think. But it has a huge player base now. Sea of Thieves has had a bunch of content over the years. There's different expansions that they've put out every year. There's even a Pirates of the Caribbean expansion. But you can also play it solo now. Like, they updated it last year, so you can play every single piece of story content solo, which I think is fantastic. It's gotten a bunch of quality of life improvements over the years to the point where Sea of Thieves is a fantastic game now, where you can pretty much do whatever you want. Again, I think the single player thing is going to be attractive to a lot of people because you get to sail around and not worry about other players' ships, which is cool. Now, bear in mind, I've been on Twitter since 2012 with my current account, and I've seen a lot of hate by another player base for Sea of Thieves for years now, calling it, trash of thieves, all that stuff. And, it is technically an old game. It is also a first-person game where you're on ships that move on water. And guess what's number one pre-ordered game on PlayStation right now? Sea of Thieves. Now, that kind of surprised me. I thought Sea of Thieves would be even bigger on Switch, mainly because of, it being portable, although I think they're clearly waiting for the Switch 2. But like Logan, what do you think about it? Because again, I've been told for years that Sea of Thieves is trash, and it's number one pre-ordered game. It's ahead of Dragon's Dogma, it's ahead of Elden Ring DLC, and it's ahead of not Ghost of Tsushima, the Rise of the Ronin, like this first-person sailing game.
Well, first off, I think it's kind of funny that for a console that didn't have any games for a few years, that apparently the games they did have, people really, really, really actually wanted to play. Because the fact that there was two different versions of it in like the top 10 for pre-order for PlayStation, like the Ultimate whatever edition of Sea of Thieves, and then the standard one. And then on top of that, Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment are doing all right as well, apparently for pre-orders. And it's just crazy to me that so many people mocked it and clowned it and all this. But turns out that was just that Twitter clout, baby, and that they just were trying to get caught up in hype and momentum and toxic nonsense when they actually wanted it. And kudos to the game. Happy for Rare. You know, ideally, I still want a world where there are certain, franchises you know what to expect for. Like, your Halos are here and your Gods of Wars are there and stuff like that. But, for these big, massive community games or kind of like art house smaller titles, I think it's great that they're going to where they can find the most success. And this will certainly, at the end of the day, if you're bothered by it, at least comfort yourself in knowing that PlayStation fans are helping fund future Xbox games that you will play. So, at the end of the day, if it helps you sleep at night, just tell yourself that they got these suckers covered and they're getting money from them and they're going to turn around and make good Xbox content. So, worst case scenario, it'll still be good for you.
Yeah, like I've seen a lot of people run with the whole, "Oh, this proves that Microsoft's going to put more titles on the, other platforms." I think that like Microsoft, these new pieces of hardware these console manufacturers make, they cost billions with a B, billions of dollars to R&D and manufacture. Like Microsoft wouldn't do that if their end goal was to just go everywhere. Like the live service games, they kind of make sense after a time. The smaller titles make sense. I think in an ideal world, would everything just be like on everything? Could you play your Mario on your Xbox and Super Smash Brothers on your PlayStation? Of course, but we don't live in that world. Microsoft and Sony are going through a weird time at the minute where the AAA, or should I say the gaming space, is going through it. Well, basically everyone other than Nintendo. And I at first it was a shock to the system. There's still people missing on Twitter because of the whole it's tribalism at the end of the day, and people get tribal about everything on Twitter. There's sports, mobile phones. Like people get angry that if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, or if you're a Mac versus a Windows user, like it's territorial and it's always been that way and it always will be that way. Like the console space is no different. But I think about it like this, and as Logan said, like whatever Rare makes next is being funded by PlayStation fans, and it's going to be on Xbox, likely only Xbox. Like, that's the reality of the situation, and I think too many people are running with, "Oh, this proves that they're going to put Halo there." That's just not a thing, I will say this though, the motion sickness thing. When Indiana Jones was announced in January, there was this like huge uptick all of a sudden in my feed of people mentioning motion sickness. And don't get me wrong, motion sickness does affect people in games. VR literally messes with your equilibrium. You're moving around in a 3D environment, yet you don't actually feel yourself moving, so it causes people to get
I
sick.
can't do it.
Yeah, like I've tried multiple different VR helmets. I've tried the what do you call it? The Oculus Dev Kit 1, Dev Kit 2, Dev Kit Retail. I've tried PlayStation VR. I got motion sick every single time, but I get motion sick on a bus, right? Right? So I genuinely get motion sick, but like playing first person games, there's no difference between someone playing a game in first person and third person. The only difference is that there's a character slightly off to the side on the left side of the screen. That's the only difference, and field of view. You know, back in, and we've talked about this before, back in the 2000s, where we were getting more first-person shooters, developers used to put this thing in games called head bob, where the character's head would bob throughout the game when they were walking or running. Games like Mirror's Edge used to have this. Call of Duty pretty much eliminated it after Call of Duty 2. Crisis 1 and 2 had it, but you had the ability to disable it. That would cause people to get sick because your screen would move up and down. That was a thing, Like, I put it like this, when I first played Mirror's Edge, it had major camera bob. So I had to, like, lie down for 40 minutes. But now, it's not really an issue. But with Indiana Jones being announced in January, like, my entire feed was like, oh, what about motion sickness? There was people that worked at IGN and all these other media outlets. They're like, but what about these gamers that get motion sick? How come motion sickness never gets mentioned when people want this Killzone collection? Or when Call of Duty's brought up? Or Battlefield? But Indiana Jones being first person made people motion sick, but all these people are all of a sudden going to play a game where you play in first person on a pirate ship on a moving ocean. Now, did all of these like pre-orders come with motion sickness medication? Because like I've never seen motion sickness mentioned in gaming like the way it has been this year. Like you have the occasional person that will say, "I get motion sick," and that's it. That's that. But for some reason in January, everyone had motion sickness. If you go to Reset Era where Indiana Jones was first announced, scroll down through that page, first 2 pages, it's people talking about motion sickness. But how come you don't get motion sick with Killzone or Call of Duty? That's a bit weird, that, isn't it? Or do we have a thing now called selective motion sickness? Like, that's crazy. Come on. Be better. But anyway, Sea of Thieves, #1 on PlayStation, which is crazy. I will say this, though, and this isn't a console war thing. They will get absolutely decimated online. like as an Xbox player that plays now and then, like, there's people with fully loaded chips. They know what they are doing. If PlayStation gamers go online and they are going up against, veteran Xbox and PC players, it's going to be like that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where the ship's getting blown apart. Because it's just not going to be pretty. Excuse me. But hey, I'm sure a lot of people will like it. Joking aside, I'm pretty sure it's going to have a decent player base. I will be interested to see what that's going to be like on the Switch 2, or whatever it's going to be called. By the way, before we change topic, Logan, did you see the apparent leaked name for the Switch 2?
I have not. What is it?
The Switch Attach. Apparently,
oh, come on. That is such a Nintendo name.
yeah. I've seen a bunch of people saying, "Oh, that sounds so bad. It's obviously fake." Do you know why I believe it? Because it is bad. And the thing is, I think Nintendo, like, they're going to have huge success with the Switch 2 or whatever. But I think, like, Nintendo's naming of products is just weird. They hit gold.
The Wii U.
Yeah. And the one that did it for me was the new Nintendo 3DS.
yeah.
Like, come on. And then they came out with the new Nintendo 2DS. It's like, in my opinion, I think the new Switch should be called the Super Switch. But no, Nintendo, they're either going to call it something like Switch Attach, and it's probably going to have like a microphone that you can attach to it instead of using your mobile phone, or they're going to call it the new Nintendo Switch. Because the Nintendo. They call it something weird where they didn't, do like, marketing research trying to find out. Anyway, Switch stuff aside, I think a lot of people are going to love Sea of Thieves. And plus, there's nothing really like Sea of Thieves out in the market outside of, I think there's an indie game called Atlas, but I don't even think you can buy it anymore. I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me. Anyway, we'll move on. So, the Fallout TV show trailer, been out about a month ago. The new one dropped the other day. It looks amazing. It really does. And like, as someone that doesn't watch a lot of modern television shows, this new TV show looks fantastic. It looks amazing. It's big budget. You've got the drop ships. You've got the power armor. It looks exactly like what you'd want from a Fallout TV show. And the cool thing is, it's actually canon to the video games. So when the next one comes out, we're probably going to hear about events that happen in the TV show. And the cool thing is, and I'm surprised this even made the news because, I think Microsoft would want to try and keep it quiet, is that Todd Howard was apparently on set and questioning about the show to make sure that it doesn't actually have any of the same story elements that Fallout 5 is going to have, which kind of made me raise my eyebrow because according to everyone that, Fallout 5 is apparently just, jotted down notes on a paper tissue at this point because, Elder Scrolls, that's coming in, 2026, so Fallout 5 is, realistically, it could be saying the year is kind of depressing just in general, but like it could be a 2030 game maybe.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That sounds so long.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, but like it could be a 2030 game, it could be a game that comes out a few years after the next generation. And like, I think that's cool that they clearly have plans for the game, which is really important because you don't want them to finish Elder Scrolls and then just work straight from scratch on Fallout. Like, the tech they're making now with the new Elder Scrolls game, which is new tech, that's obviously going to be used for Fallout. Personally, I've always been more of a Fallout fan as opposed to Elder Scrolls, and I love Elder Scrolls. But like, I think fans have been clamoring for a new Fallout game for years. Fallout's going to have a huge few years ahead. The TV show, I think that's going to do really well. They'll probably put out a season 2 because Amazon has a stupid amount of money. The Fallout 4 next gen upgrade is coming out this year. The Fallout 3 remaster is apparently coming out next year. So like, Fallout fans, they're going to have some games to play. But I really think that them mentioning that they already have story wrote down, that's a big thing. What about you, Logan?
Yeah, that's a big deal. It shows you that there's at the bare minimum a framework in place for where they would go with Fallout 5. It shows, at its very basic that they at least have a good idea of where to start from and where they're going and how to frame the story and factions and characters and events and stuff like that. So that's good news. That means it hasn't just been sitting in a warehouse collecting dust, or Todd isn't just sitting in his office, twirling an evil mustache, thinking of, you know, um, fridge ports for Fallout or something like that. Like they have an idea in place and they're actively pursuing it. So that was good news.
Yeah, I think that, like, obviously we may be waiting a long time for the next Fallout game, but like, I think with Microsoft having all the studios now, there's endless potential. Like, they could have Obsidian come out with a new game between now and Fallout 5. We just don't know. Like, Fallout 5 is obviously going to be like a big deal for Bethesda, because it's been so long since the last one. Personally, like, here's my relationship with Fallout. Fallout 3, I was obsessed with Fallout 3. Like, that game, I'm not even kidding. I think Fallout 3 actually helped me with my I should say helped me get insomnia, like, because like I was obsessed with that game. But like, I was obsessed with that game, and then like Fallout 4 came out eventually, and I have the collector's edition with the Pip Boy. And you know what? I stopped playing Fallout 4 for the dumbest reason. I stopped playing Fallout 4 because the way scrap works. You know, if you collected a blueprint in, and this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to mention it anyway. So, if you found like a blueprint in Fallout 3 for, let's say, the trash cannon, it would say things like you need a pressure cooker, a pipe, and then like maybe something else, and then you'd go to a workbench and make it, and you'd put scrap in it to use as ammo, right? Pretty simple thing. Well, and I get what Todd Howard and the team were doing, and it's genius, really, if you think about it, where in Fallout 4, every object in the game is made of individual components. So a microwave isn't a microwave. A microwave is made of glass, metal, wires. And they essentially made every piece of anything in Fallout 4 a necessary resource. Now that really, it really messed with my OCD and hoarding in video games, because I needed to hoard everything I found in that game. Like, I got to the first town in Fallout 4, and I was over encumbered. I was like 250 overweight, couldn't move my character, and I was just like, I can't do this. It nearly broke me. like, but one of my friends has told us how to manage that. But like, I'm going to play that when the next gen upgrade comes out, which is great. So I'm looking forward to that. But like, I love Fallout. I love Fallout, and when it comes to New Vegas, I'm gonna get some hate for this. Like, I don't like the color palette of New Vegas. The fact that everything is orange really annoyed me. I know I know I'm a bit weird for that, but but outside of that, I think that there's a huge player base. They've been wanting Obsidian. I would love to see Obsidian take another go at Fallout. They clearly know what they're doing when it comes to RPGs, and they clearly have the talent for it. You know, I don't think personally with the studios they have, I don't think we're going to be waiting until Fallout 5 for a quote unquote new Fallout game. It just makes too much sense. They have In Exile, they have Obsidian, these large studios that make multiple games at the same time. I don't know. What about you, Logan? Do you think they'll come out with another Fallout game potentially before 5 by Obsidian or In Exile?
I could definitely see it. Like you said, they literally have the all the teams involved with the Fallout universe. You have the original creators of the IP in Exile. You have Obsidian, who did one of the most famous entries in the series and a very popular spin-off in New Vegas. And you have just Bethesda Game Studios, who are the shepherds of the current franchise. So I totally could see it happening. And honestly, like, I'll just throw it out there, try to will it into existence. But they keep re releasing this, Nuke Edition Vault thing of the older Fallout games for PC and stuff. Surely in the year 2024, we have the capabilities and technology and resources to port Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics to console. Like, we have the original Bard's Tale trilogy. We have the original Wasteland remastered in some kind of format. We have all these other games that are getting ported over. Surely Fallout, Fallout 2, and Fallout Tactics, especially with the show coming out, could get a console edition. Come on, it just seems a no-brainer at this point.
Yeah, there's clearly a market for those like older style PC versions of the games, and they could put those on console. Like if they can get Wasteland working on a console, they can get the older Fallout games. Especially considering you have a bunch of the same people that's worked on them. I think they could get them to come over. And I think it's a bit disappointing when you see this really cool like nuke looking thing, and it's just the PC version. It's like, come on, you're part of Xbox now. At, at least try a little bit, but yeah, that would be cool to come. But again, I don't think people will be waiting until Fallout 5 till we get something new with Fallout. Again, the remaster comes out next year. This year's the next gen upgrade for 4. It's a good time. And I think the TV show being successful will pretty much accelerate everything Fallout. Because if I was Microsoft, I would have made sure that the remaster came out this year. But again, apparently that was a year out past Oblivion, which comes out this year allegedly. But hey, it's good to see that stuff's coming, and the fact that they have plans shows that they may have actually started pre-production already. Because, they have all the lore wrote up, have all the monster designs, and then they can finally get to work after Elder Scrolls is, through its primary development phase, which, hey, it's good to see. Now, I think that we need to talk about some next, should I say, some upcoming game stuff. So HellBlade is just around the corner. Releases this May. It's actually pretty close. Personally, I'm really looking forward to it. I think that I've seen a lot of people mention on social media that it being a shorter game is a problem because of how long it's been in development. I think when you have a game that's using that kind, like nobody's using Unreal Engine at the minute that we know of, like Ninja Theory. No one's making games that look like that. People will take offense to me saying that it looks like the best third-person game ever made because I've never seen a game that looks that good, ever. Logan, do you have any problem with HellBlade being a shorter game, albeit that it is going to be in Game Pass and it's also going to be a cheaper game?
No, none at all. Like, if this is what they wanted to do, have at it. And, like, to be frank and blunt, like, there are some experiences in life and in films and games and television that are kind of just, you need short doses of them or short bursts of them. And then some that are more casual and, happy go lucky to where you can just have a lot more. Like Hellblade 1 is an incredibly deep and engrossing and powerful and emotionally, psychologically, thematically deep and heavy subject material. And it is not for the faint of heart. And it is not a warm and fuzzy, make you feel jovial type experience. So to me, the idea of that, oh, Hellblade 2 must be some 40 plus hour experience. Like, honestly, 40 plus hours of that might just make you feel bummed out of your mind, to be honest. Like, I'm super stoked for it and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be awesome and brilliantly done. The first one is a masterpiece in my opinion. I think this one's going to be even better and it's going to take it to the next level and stuff, but this is not a type of experience that I would want huge doses of. It is, I think, an 8 to 12, 8 to 14, maybe 20 at most hour type experience for this type of game with the material, the story, the and like even the combat is just brutal. Like there's a difference between, a hack and slash game where, you got goblins or people and you're just fighting, you go, okay, slash, they fall over, do this. This is like hardcore breakdown, like they slash at you, you block it, you thrust, you almost like feels like cutting, and then like chopping and slashing and smashing and crunching and just the whole experience of it. I think is supercharged to where I think the hours that they chose is perfect for it, and I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I think people are so used to these like massive games now, where people look at the game price and then how long the game is now, and I don't think that's really going to work for everything. Like I play a lot of open world RPGs or RPGs in general. And like, don't get me wrong, I love longer games, but I really need something to change the pace sometimes. I can't. I'm getting sick and tired, honestly, of every game being like 90 hours long. Like, why do you think the Assassin's Creed fan base is like clamoring for something to go back to how it used to be? Because Assassin's Creed games used to be 25 hours long, and then they just jumped to 90. You know, not everything needs to be that long. I think 8 to 10 hours is perfect. Like, I'm looking at right. So Alien Isolation, and I've talked about how great Alien Isolation is many times. It says here, so the average completion time is 18 and a half hours. Do you know it took me 33 hours to finish Alien Isolation? Thir- Most of that time I spent hiding in a locker, but still, like, it took me like 33 hours. And to me, as much as I loved Alien Isolation, I would have preferred it if it was like a 15-hour long horror game. And not everybody's going to spend the same amount of time in these games. So, like, people are gonna speed run Hellblade in just like a few hours. People do it with all sorts of games. And then there's people that just want to take the time. Red Dead Redemption to me is a necessary, just to me. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a necessary 100-hour game, but people can play that in like 10 hours. They're crazy, and they'll probably use glitches, but like it just is what it is. And I think, like, do we really want everything to be 100 hours long? One of the main reasons I keep talking about how good Crisis Core Reunion was is because it's a JRPG and it's 20 hours long. Like, that's crazy. And I'll use Judgment as an example, right? I've been doing a lot of side quest stuff in Judgment as well as the main quest stuff. I'm now on chapter 8 of 12, and I'm 18 hours into the game. 18 hours. And I've loved my experience with it. I'm probably going to be a bit around maybe 25 hours when I finish Judgment. And you know what? To me, that's a great experience, right? 25 hours. Obviously, I'm going to be able to go back and do some side quest stuff. But like I see Pyro Madden chat, like yesterday he posted his gameplay, and bear in mind, same game, Judgment, 21 hours. I think it was 21 hours, and he's on chapter 2. like, so like it's really different for everyone. So again, we're playing the same game, chapter 2, 21 hours, and I'm at chapter 8, 18 hours. Like, everyone plays games differently. I call the Mass Effect trilogy a 150-hour game because essentially each game is 50 hours long. You know, if you take your time and you 100% every single game. And that's just because people play differently. Um, like I'm curious to wonder like why people want everything to be a long game. Like like you said, Logan. Like, do people really want to play a morbidly depressing like third person action adventure game like HellBlade for 40 hours? I don't think I could do that. 10 hours, great. 15 hours, great. But like, I don't need long games. In fact, I would like shorter games. One of the reasons why I keep parading this game, Exodus, that's coming out, hopefully soon, like that's going to be like a 25-hour, 35-hour RPG, which we don't see much of now. It's one of the reasons why I'm keep talking about Outer Worlds 2 and, you know, Avowed. Avowed is going to be like a 25 to 35-hour RPG, which is fantastic. We don't need massive games for every single, you know, title. And I don't know. I just think, you know, gamers, maybe, I'm not saying we expect too much, but I think that maybe people need to calm down. You know, again, like one of the reasons why I loved Assassin's Creed Mirage is because it was a 20-hour Assassin's Creed game. I put maybe 90 hours, maybe more, into Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I felt like I was not making any progress. It was just quest after quest after quest, walking thousands of miles. Like, we finally get an Assassin's Creed game set in the UK, like back in, like, you know, ancient times essentially, and like it's that long, and I was so disinterested to the point where I didn't actually finish Valhalla. It's a beautiful game, great combat, but the story's boring in my opinion, and it's like no end in sight, you know. So I'm welcoming more like shorter games. Again, Avowed, 25 to 35 hours, perfect to me. I'm loving Avatar at the minute. I'm guessing when I finish Avatar, I'm going to be about 150 hours. People will obviously be playing that shorter, but, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, we'll move on. I just think that, you know, the whole game topic when it comes to length can be a bit weird sometimes. You know what? I want to talk about this quickly. Logan, you've probably seen in the past week there's been a lot of talk about frame rates because, you know, Dragon's Dogma is 30 frames per second, although it is going to be unlocked, or there's going to be unlocked mode. So if you play that on Xbox with VRR support, essentially you're going to get maybe 40 to 60 frames depending on, you know, where you're at in the game. Excuse me. So anyway, the frame rate topic's been all over the place this past week. You know, people last year were saying they couldn't play Starfield because it was 30. And people have been posting these memes and stuff that some people can't tell the difference between 30 and 60. Personally, I can see the difference. Like, I can totally see the difference between 30 and 60, but playing 30, and I'm going to get some hate for this, doesn't really bother me that much. Like, I prefer 60. I like look at Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Notice that I can make any topic about Mass Effect. I played those games at 30 frames for over a decade, and then with Legendary Edition, it's flawless, absolutely beautifully flawless at 60. And I loved playing Mass Effect Trilogy at 60. But like when it comes to like Alan Wake 2, I chose to play that at 30 because of how good it looks. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, I chose to play that at 30 because of how good it looked. I know, Logan, you played it at 30 as well, right?
Yeah, and like I'll go a step further. Like some people might lay me a an apostate or blasphemous heathen or something, but I actually just prefer visual fidelity mainly in my games. There are a few exceptions to where I will prioritize FPS over visual fidelity, but in general, like I just I embrace it. I 30 FPS doesn't bother me. Um yes, you can tell a difference in experience for some games more than others, definitely. But in general, for me, it's like I want the overall. visual quality and fidelity for my experience. Like, especially when I'm not playing a competitive game. If I'm playing a competitive game, different story. But for just a single player game, or especially one of those, hashtag third person sad dad games, visual fidelity is more where it's at for me. So, and like even Xbox had stats that back that up, that the majority of gamers go for the visual fidelity over the FPS. And, I know that might bust the Twitter bubble a little bit, but as we've talked about ad nauseum on here, the hashtag real world gamers versus the Twitter gamers, the difference is pretty shocking. And this is just another one of those areas. Like, I didn't know what FPS even was, besides first person shooter, until I had been on Twitter for a hot minute. Like, I had never even heard the term outside of first person shooter. And now I'm well aware of it and versed in it, but to me, it is not a deal breaker.
Yeah, like if I play a shooter, I really want to play 60, or especially a first person shooter. Like 60 just feels better to me. Uh, some people pop off if you say that you don't mind playing at 30. Like the truth is, I like this is how my eyes work when it comes to 30. Right, I prefer 60, but maybe like 5 minutes in Alan Wake 2, I completely forgot. I was just engrossed in the story. I'm moving a character slowly. I don't really care. You know, um, let's say the next Doom game. Of course, I want 60. Halo, yes, 60. Call of Duty, of course, I want 60. But like, if it, like I chose to play, I put it like this. Uh, People that say that you can't see the difference in like 30 and 60, you need your eyes checked. Personally, I don't see how people can't see a difference. But do you want? I've been doing this little social experiment for the past year and a half on Twitter, which I'm just telling people about now. So I post multiple game clips on Twitter every single day. Games I've been playing. And if I'm posting a backwards compatible video, I'll post about if that game has upgrades. Maybe it's 4K resolution, auto HDR, 60 frames or 120 frames per second. So I always post what frames per second those games have. So next time people ever like get curious about frame rates and stuff, if I ever post about a modern game and I don't have frames per second listed, look at the comments. I get asked all the time if a game is 60 or 30. So does that mean you can't tell if it's 30 or 60 just off watching my video? Because the video compression is a thing on Twitter. However, the frames per second isn't. Twitter can do 1080p, 60, and that's fine, But for some reason, I get asked what frame rate the games are that I'm playing. It's because, like, I think most people just generally don't care. And we've went years and years and decades playing 30. Do you really think when GTA 6 comes out, and this is a rhetorical question, do you really think when GTA 6 comes out and they say it's 30 across the board, people are all of a sudden going to say, oh, I'm not going to buy it now? People are going to buy that game in droves. It's going to sell like 50 million copies the first week, and it's going to be 30 frames on every platform until it releases on PC a year later. Like, that's the reality of the situation, And look at Gears. Gears used to be 30 frames, and now it's 60. It plays amazing at 60, and people want 60 FPS for Gears, and that's awesome because it kind of is that type of game you need. But when I played Jedi Survivor, in my 35-hour playthrough, I think I played maybe. I think I played about 32 hours of it in 4K mode, and I was perfectly happy. Do you know if Call of Duty this year came out and they said it was 30, I'd be livid. I see Kerry asked in chat, like, Avatar, again, people ask me, is it 30 or 60? And I posted a clip yesterday of it. Absolutely gorgeous game. I've been playing Avatar in quality mode. A first-person shooter. Well, first-person arrow gun shooter. But anyway, I've been playing that at quality. Because the detail in that world is ridiculous. Some people will get angry, by the way. But it is what it is. Uh, if I could play Avatar at that quality at 60, obviously I'd do it. But hey, I'm a nerd for the graphics in that game. There's no open world like Avatar, and like I'm choosing 30. And I went back and forth between quality and performance in that game when I first started, but like I had to stick, with 30 because of just the way it looks. And plus, it's kind of more slower paced first person game. Whereas RoboCop, I played that at 60, and it plays amazing at 60 frames. But like you're gonna see this next few weeks, Dragon's Dogma 2 is gonna come out. It's 30 frames unless you have VRR, and that's gonna be one of the best selling games of the year. And people will argue on Twitter all day about how 30 is unplayable. Is 30 really going to be unplayable when GTA comes out? Are you going to deprive yourself from playing GTA 6 day one when it comes out in 2025? No, you're not. Hell, even on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's going to be 30. Like, everyone knows that. I don't have a little magic crystal ball here and I can like see the resolutions and frame rates of future games on future hardware. It's like Rockstar's Rockstar. They're going to push graphics as much as they can. They don't really care. And guess what? No one will care when that game comes out. And, last thing I'll say before we close out the show, Gears news. I think a lot of people are expecting Gears news this year. It's been way too long since we've had a mainline Gears game. Way too long. Like, Logan, when was that? Was Gears 6? I should say Gears 5. Was Gears 5 2019?
Let me look, because it honestly has been a hot minute. Gears 5 was 2019, yeah.
Wow.
It's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, after that, Gears Tactics, and then, it wasn't until like a year later till it actually came out for console. And yeah, that franchise has been dormant too long. I think Coalition is really cooking something up there.
Yeah, I do think we are going to hear about that game fairly soon. And like the whole Gears collection thing has been rumored, but like I'm leaning towards like and I know Boomsticks reported this a bunch of times because I think it's actually happening. I think that the Gears collection is going to launch this year, and I think that we're going to see a trailer, at least an early trailer for Gears 6, much like they did with 5 and 4, because the Gears fandom, they've been waiting a long time. I think 5 years has been long enough. They had the expansion come out in 2020. Most of the development team, they worked on a different IP which got canned, even though we haven't seen anything about that. But I think this year is going to be good for Fallout fans, Elder Scrolls fans, and Gears fans. I'll just put it that way. Anyway, Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
Oh, one last thing is System Shock Remake finally got its release date of May for this year, which is something we had been waiting on for a long time for Xbox and PlayStation. So I love Night Dive. Definitely check it out when it hits in May.
Yeah. I've been talking about this, by the way, for like 5 years. System Shock Remake, because I think it was first announced in 2016, and then it changed engines like twice, and then they had the Kickstarter. Like that game has went through development hell, but the game they've put out, people love it. But it's finally coming out in May. The game looks fantastic. They have apparently the ending's been reworked because some people weren't happy with it. Which, hey, if the game's good, I don't really care. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The game looks fantastic. The YouTube channel, the Xbox YouTube channel, has the trailer up now. You can watch it in 4K. Gorgeous game. People are going to be nuts with that. And if you haven't played a System Shock game, well, if you like BioShock, maybe play this when it comes out. But yeah, anyway, everyone in chat's been awesome once again. Now we will be back the same time next week. We have. I can't speak properly today because I'm sick as hell today. The last show we had was last Wednesday. We had to change day because I was sick. YouTube, for some reason, isn't putting out a lot of notifications for people's subscriptions, which is annoying. So if you enjoy the show, it really does help when you like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps the channel out. I have another video coming out soon before the next episode. Yeah, that's right. I have another if you like Xbox-centric stuff, I have a video coming out between now and next Tuesday, which I've been working on for a few months now. I think people will really like it. Logan, once again, it's been great talking to you. Everyone in chat has been amazing. Again, we don't really get many fanboys over here. I see someone asking about Gears on PlayStation. I don't think that's going to be a thing. Anyway, outside of my other video coming out between now and next week, we'll be back at the same time next week on All Things Xbox Podcast. Anyway, we're out, everybody. Peace.